A leather-covered recoil pad is a classic addition to a fine shotgun. Let me show you how to make one. Leather-covered pads are traditionally found on higher-grade shotguns, like this British-made William Cashmore side-by-side. I'm going to replace the aftermarket recoil pad on this pre-1913 LC Smith No. 3 grade. All that's required are a few simple items, including a recoil pad, some thin leather, and contact cement. The ventilated recoil pad on this gun is not original, and the first step is to remove it. I'll replace it with a solid Pachmayr decelerator pad because vents in the side would show through the leather. I have to plug the screw holes in the stock because the holes in the new pad don't line up with the existing holes. The holes are drilled out for 1/4-inch dowels. I've cut the dowels from a scrap piece of English walnut to match the stock. Next, I crimp the dowels to let out any trapped air so the dowels don't pop out. Once the glue dries, I trim the dowels flush with the surface. The butt is not perfectly flat, so I use the belt sander to true it up. Now I can fit the new pad to the stock. The location for the first screw hole is marked and drilled with a No. 33 drill. I coat the screw with soap to allow it to turn in easier. Then the second hole is marked and drilled. Now I use a scribe to trace around the butt, marking the bottom of the pad. This Miles Gilbert recoil pad installation fixture is used to hold the pad while sanding it to shape. Using a square, I transfer the angle of the comb line to the fixture. Then I adjust the pitch screw until it bottoms out on the base. The toe angle is next. With the fixture set, I attach the pad, then file some chalk into the line to make it easier to see. Using a belt sander, I sand the pad to the line. Once the toe is shaped, I adjust the fixture against the stop and shape the heel. For thicker leather, the pad would have to be slightly smaller than the stock. This leather is only about 25 thousandths thick, so I'm not going to cut the pad any smaller. Now I can cut the holes for the plugs. I'm using a shop-made cutter to cut 1/2-inch holes in the pad. Oil lubricates the cutter and keeps the pad from tearing. To hold the pad, I screw it to a short pine board, then grind off the logo. Otherwise, it would show through the leather. The next step is to stretch the leather over the pad. This leather is made from pigskin, which stretches easily, and this piece has been dyed a nice brown color. Soaking the leather with water makes stretching it over the pad much easier. From this point forward, it's important to keep your hands clean to keep from staining the leather. I start at the heel. Push pins hold the leather in place as I work my way around the pad, making sure to stretch out any wrinkles. Keeping the leather wet makes it easy to work. Once I'm satisfied with the way it looks, surgical tubing will help hold the leather against the bottom edge of the pad until it dries. After drying overnight, the leather has formed to the shape of the pad. I use contact cement to glue the leather in place. Only one half can be glued at a time, since the leather can't be repositioned once the two surfaces touch. Now I can fold back the other half and glue it in place. The plug holes need to be opened up, so I make a series of pie cuts, making sure to stay just slightly away from the edge. Then the leather is pushed into the holes. Next, I remove the pad from the board. The leather has to be folded under the pad and glued in place. I trim the leather carefully to keep it from bunching up, being careful not to trim past the edge of the pad. Again, contact cement is used to glue the leather to the bottom of the pad. With the leather in place, I coat the bottom of the pad with 5-minute epoxy. The epoxy helps hold the edge of the leather in place, and by clamping the pad to the bench, I'll have a perfectly flat surface where the pad meets the stock. I also need to make some plugs to fill the holes in the pad. They're cut from a piece of closed-cell foam. To shape the leather to cover the plugs, I wet the leather with alcohol and, using a dowel, push it into a pre-drilled hole in a scrap piece of wood. Once the leather dries, I can trim it to size. Contact cement is used again to glue the plugs together. Then I glue and fold the leather around the plugs. A traditional leather pad often has a set of lines burnished into the leather. On this William Cashmore, they're about 1/8 of an inch from the base of the pad. I have a fixture that's been made here in the shop. It's simply 2 wheels on a small axle. With the pad on the fixture, I push the pad into the wheels until the lines are clearly visible. Wetting the leather with alcohol helps allow the lines to be formed clearly. With the leather dry, the last step is to apply a leather finish, which I apply with a small brush, letting it soak in. It takes a couple of coats. Once the finish dries, I buff it with a clean cloth. The finished pad is attached to the stock and the plugs pushed into place.